Good morning, CLC. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of our service. A special thank you to Jeffrey Oshman, Peter Trout, and Melody and Mackenzie Berryman. We're so happy to have you guys join us today. So we will have a rockin' day. I know everybody's all excited to hear all that wonderful music, as well as hear Jesse speak, because we know we like Jesse too. And with that, I ask you now to say with me, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is. And now, in this moment, I invite you to just relax. Take a few deep breaths. Put aside anything you have going on this past week or anything you have coming up. Just let it go, just for now. Relax your body. Let any tension or any stress that you may be holding in your shoulders or in your jaw, just let it ooze down into your seat or bed or wherever you are. And relax at this moment. Clear your mind, center your soul, and be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one and all is well. As we begin the inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your right hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging the higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems, while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of the infinite presence, I simply speak these words: I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one special idea that I am willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. In visualizing the idea as already acted upon and brought to pass, in seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words: I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or a mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in the room with me this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I am grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude and say, I am grateful for the good in your life.
Hello, Creative Life. I was just sitting there thinking about not the talk I'm about to give, but next week's talk. Next week is going to be a wonderful talk. I hope you'll... Oh, no, a bunch of stuff just came to me I want to say, but I already have today kind of mapped out for you. In the Science of Mind textbook by Ernest Holmes, you're familiar with this, I think? If you're not, we're here to help. He opens by saying, we all look forward to the day when science and religion walk hand in hand. And when I first read that, I thought, well, I don't much care one way or another, science and religion. What does that mean to me? Then later I came to understand it better. And then in the last year, we've had COVID-19. And I understood it at a whole different level, as probably you did too, the idea of science and religion walking hand in hand. So what I'm here to do today is to talk about, can you hear me all right? Okay. Is to talk a little bit about spirit and form and how they fit together, and to maybe correct a misunderstanding or misapprehension that some may have about where one leaves off and the other begins. Our belief in this teaching is that there's one life, but within that life, within that life, exists all manner of things. There's a unity, and within the unity, a diversity of expression. And diversity means everything you think it means and more. Because we're even talking about form and potential. Not only what is so, but what could be so. All of that exists within the unity, within the oneness. Okay? Spiritual practice is about touching base with the oneness in the midst of the manyness. So on your ordinary Tuesday at work, you can turn away for a moment from the things that occupy your mind, all the duties, all the expectations, and you can turn within and go to this place of oneness that doesn't see you as simply a mechanism by which stuff happens. It sees you as the experience that it's having of itself in this world by means of you. And this is called treatment or prayer or even just a fleeting meditation. But you touch base with this one, not for the purpose of checking in with it so that it can say, oh, you're a good religious person, you checked in with me, but so that you can have a glimpse of the fullness of who you are and bring it back to your desk. Bring it back to your workplace. Bring it back to what you're doing as a student, as a creative person, whatever you're up to in this life. Out on the golf course, where these guys spend time. You can have this knowing of oneness. Now, what happens periodically is that the oneness breaks through while you're sitting there, let's say, at your desk. You hadn't planned to set aside time for a spiritual awakening, but one happens anyway. And when this happens, it's called a mystical moment, you know, and it shakes people up. It startles them. And they often write about it, or they tell somebody who they think might understand, you know, and it becomes kind of a watershed moment in their life to have this sudden burst of knowing of oneness. This even happens to people who have no particular belief in the oneness of everything. They're bopping along believing whatever it is they're believing. They have some understanding of God, or they don't, you know. It makes no difference. Because if the truth of our being is that it's all one, then the truth of our being must make itself known to every sentient being, independent of whatever belief system they might have. So it's like really radical when it happens to somebody who thinks that there's like no power behind all of this, who is just completely, we would say, materialistic, you know, just locked into the acquisition of stuff, when all of a sudden a sense comes over them. Emerson called it the sempiternal sense, which is an Emersonian way of saying eternal or everlasting sense. When this sense comes over you, all of a sudden in the midst of your materiality, every one of your values is shaken up. And so throughout history, we call these people mystics who were shaken up, who were startled, you know, wrote about it, sang about it, told somebody about it. And most of the world ignored them. And some people said, you know, I've had a similar experience, but I've never told anybody. And they became a student of that mystic, often hundreds of years later, you know, through their writings and stuff. But it brings us to metaphysical religion, which was in really the middle to the end of the 19th century, this explosion of thought where something that had been denied and overlooked in Western culture was finally recognized. That, yeah, there is a sense that the divine is ubiquitous, it's everywhere, that there is a oneness, there is a totality to life, and that I can experience this. And people started to just go do this without benefit of book, without benefit of clergy. They just started to pray as if in faith believing. They started to go out into nature and see there displayed for them the power of creation in a way that nobody could explain. Where science comes into all of this is that within the unity, I mentioned there's a diversity, and the diversity breaks down into two, and it breaks down into three, and it breaks down into four, and it breaks down into every other number you could think of. The three you may be familiar with as the Trinity, the Christian Trinity. There's also a Hindu Trinity. Several different major religions have a Trinity. Some say that all the Trinities are representative of cause, medium, and effect. You be the judge of that, and you read up on it and see what you think. The duality, which is not an opposition, it's more of a yin-yang like we have on the wall here. It's the containment of apparent opposites within a whole, this duality. And the apparent opposites that we're working with are the world of spirit and the world of form. Spiritual thinking, material thinking. Often you get an argument out of people for one side or the other of this. The spiritual-minded people will say, we're right, you need to come be with us. The material-minded people will say, you're crazy, you need to come be with us. You're never going to make any money being a spiritual-minded person. Spiritual-minded person says to the material-minded people, you're never going to have an upward exaltation of your soul just by mixing around in the world of commerce. And so these two camps of people have tended to, well, be just that and kind of look suspiciously at each other. When Holmes talks about science and religion, walking hand in hand. What he means is out of the one life, there's a flow. Out of the one life, there's a flow. Here's the thing. Everything that's in form began in spirit. Everything that is in form began in spirit. And it came in, as one poet said, trailing clouds of glory. Trailing clouds of glory. And it came into form, and as form, it's still spirit as form. And when the form changes, maybe even dissolves altogether, it will still be spirit. Think of it as an idea that you have. In the creative process of things, you have an idea for something to create. And then you create it. And now it's a thing. Now it's a painting, or it's a plate of food, or it's whatever it is you've manifested, you've manufactured, really. Well, you know what? It's still an idea. It's still the idea that you had, just fleshed out in form. So you eat the meal, and you still have the memory of the meal, you still have the idea of the meal. Maybe you have some thoughts, too, of how to make the meal better next time, or make it different, mix it up a little, you know? You see, ideas don't go away. Spirit never exits the scene. It's only forms that come and go as the representation of spirit in that moment. In that moment. And often what we try to do, not knowing any better, is hang on to the form. Keep the form just the way it's been. Freeze dry the form. Because if we lose that form, who's to say we're ever going to get another form? Which is taking our eye off the ball. Which is causing ourselves unnecessary suffering. And a lack of joy. And a lack of real participation in the creative process. Because the more willing we are to let forms flow by and attach our attention to where they come from as spirit, the freer we are. The freer we are. Now again, it's not an either or. The whole religion and science thing, the whole spirit and form thing, it's not an either or. See, form is not bad, form is not wrong, for heaven's sake. I mean, we're here. We're in form. We know we're in form. That can't be wrong. Everybody who exists is in form. The room is in form. The building, the street, the earth. It's all in form. So it's not like some, I don't know, left turn that the cosmos took that deposited everything in form. No, it belongs in form as long as it's in form. And when its time in form has run its course, it dissolves back into spirit. Not all in one fell swoop, but stuff is doing this all the time. We're right now in the first third of springtime in this part of the world. Springtime is a beautiful thing. It will be followed, you can bet, by summer. Sooner than later in this part of the world. That will be followed by autumn. That will be followed by winter. And so on it will go. There are reasons for this physically. There are reasons for this metaphysically. We don't know exactly what the metaphysical reasons are, but we get close through the poetry of the thing. We get close through the art of the thing, through the music of the thing. I just read a rush of a new memoir, excerpts of a new memoir by Ricky Lee Jones. Do you like Ricky Lee Jones, you know, the singer? And in there she said, it's her life story and it's very interesting and you might want to read it. She's had quite a full life. And, but she makes this one comment which I, as a metaphysical interpreter of other people's work, seized onto because, because it's like, ooh, I can use that and it's true. And that's actually not the order. It's true and I can use that. I don't just select stuff because I can use it. It has to fit. It has to work. And this is what she said. She said, there's a feeling. I'm paraphrasing. This is not a direct quote, so you're going to have to read the book to see the direct quote. But I'm paraphrasing. She said, there's a feeling. There's a feeling of something. And for her, she said, words don't get me there. Music almost gets me there. but nothing gets me there. It's bigger than this, you know. I can almost touch the thing. You've heard the expression of how our reach must exceed our grasp. Isn't that nice? There must always be something more. Well, there is something more than we can possibly imagine and we could possibly contain in the world's most beautiful song or most lovely poem. And it's National Poetry Month, you know. So I have a poem for him to read to you in a minute that goes to this point. And then we will come, in fact, I'll do that now, and then we'll come back to the idea about spirit and form and how the two work together. This is a poem that I put in the weekly email this week. You may have read it already then. I hope you have. It's at the very bottom. It's by Rumi, because we're also in the early days of Ramadan, the Islamic holy month of fasting and prayer. And so I selected Rumi, the 13th century Sufi Islamic poet. You're familiar with Rumi. We've had many series and even classes here on Rumi's work. How do you teach poetry? I don't know. So we do what I'm going to do, which is read a poem and then kind of decide how it fits and what it means in our life. This is a poem called An Evolving Course. Again, 13th century, so this is around 750 years ago he was writing this. We began as a mineral. We emerged into plant life and into the animal state and then to being human. And always we have forgotten our former states except in early spring, when we dimly recall being green again. That is how a young person turns toward a teacher, how a baby leans toward the breast without knowing the secret of its desire, yet turning instinctively. So humankind is being led along an evolving course through this migration of intelligences. And though we seem to be sleeping, there is an inner wakefulness that directs the dream. It will eventually startle us back to the truth of who we are. It will eventually startle us back. There's an inner wakefulness, though we seem to be sleeping, though we seem to be sleepwalking sometimes, there's an inner wakefulness that will startle us. And in order to startle us, it has to come when we're not expecting it. Which springtime does. We generally expect it, but then one day the pecans bud. Then one day, we were grieving the azaleas, 8 weeks ago, right? And we walked through that courtyard and thought, I don't know, man, I don't know. And now it's coming back. This is how life startles us. But even so, we have a container for it called spring. It was more or less, we were dubious to a point, but still in all it's springtime. Your personal springtime, your personal moment of awakening comes with no warning. And it doesn't just happen once. In fact, it not only comes when you don't know, and you know that you don't know, it comes when you think you know, are pretty sure you know, and certainly want the rest of the world convinced that you know. When you're completely satisfied within a particular belief system, you've got it all sewn up tight. That's when this awareness, this startling wakefulness often will come in and say, here's a whole lot of stuff you haven't considered about where you've placed your own limits, where you've set your own frontiers. There is more, always. So, spirit and form. Form is stuff. Let's call it stuff for the sake of moving things along. Form is every kind of stuff you can possibly think of that you acquire or that happens to you, that you stumble over. It's not just stuff you select off a shelf, but it's the stuff that gets in the way. It's the stuff that's outworn its usefulness. It's the stuff that people drop off to you that you didn't necessarily want, not just physical stuff, but emotional stuff and so on. It's your memories. It's your looking forward, your expectations. All of that is stuff. And of course, it's physical form as well. All stuff comes from spirit. Spirit is the source of stuff. So often we get so interested in this stuff, we fail to check in with spirit, which is the source of stuff. And so when you deal with stuff at the level of stuff, And I'm being very serious. I know this sounds a little silly, but I'm being very serious. When you deal with stuff at the level of stuff, what you get is more stuff that looks like the old stuff, the same stuff. Slightly different, because nothing's ever identical, you know. But it's more like it than it isn't. And this makes us sad. Sometimes it makes us angry, you know, that the same thing keeps happening more or less in our lives, because we're dealing with stuff at the level of stuff. The remedy to that is to back away from the stuff for a moment and say, Spirit, show me who I am. Spirit, show. You can talk to Spirit in the second person, you know. Spirit, show me who I am. Because I'm here. And I want to make a difference. And in order to do that, I need to back away from all this stuff, and I need to know who I am, so all this stuff can be put in context and I can decide what my values are. And which of this stuff is more important to me than other parts of this stuff, and so forth. That's the remedy to that. The remedy to that is not to disown stuff. Now you can if you want, and there are people who do, and they shed a lot of the stuff that they have and they go live very simply in a cabin somewhere. And if you want to do that, you're certainly free to do that. But it's not the answer for absolutely everybody everywhere. There's an easier answer, more accessible answer than that, which is to touch base with the source of your own being and say, show me, remind me who I am. Remind me of the fullness of my own being. When you do that, and you come back and you work with the stuff, you work with the stuff in an entirely different way, which is the meaning of the old saying, before enlightenment I chopped wood and carried water, and after enlightenment I chopped wood and carried water. And to the idle observer, they say, well, what's the difference? You're still doing what you did. The difference is context, and context is everything. Context is everything, and that's not just a saying. You know, how do you know if you're happy? Where do you go to look if you're happy? Who do you ask? Am I happy? You can ask people, do I seem happy? But they can't tell you if you're happy. Only you know if you're happy. And conditions can appear that to the rest of the world would cause great happiness, which to you just don't meet the case, which is what Ricky Lee Jones was talking about. There's something more. There's something more. There's a framing context in which to put everything that will ultimately make you happy. When we deal with form at the level of form, we're doing a little more than rearranging the furniture, but that's the expression that's been used, is we're rearranging the furniture, expecting to have a new life as a result of all of that. But we don't ignore the furniture. We don't ignore the form. And this is where the balance between religion and science comes in. See, I was reading this piece the other day that's similar to other pieces I've been reading over the past year, which was making fun, in a very erudite way, making fun of religious people for praying about COVID-19. It was saying these foolish people think that God is going to come in and heal everything and fix it all, and as a result they're not doing certain things they should do to take care of themselves medically and take care of the people around them. And first of all, I don't know if that's true of the people that were being snarked about in the article, but here's what I want to say about that. This is where religion and science work hand in hand. To put it in the most basic terms, if a fire breaks out in the room, go get pails of water while you're treating. Okay? Call 911 if it seems to be of that. It's probably a safe idea to call 911 to start with, unless you're an expert firefighter yourself and you can see that it's going to easily be contained. Better to err on the side of more caution than not. And treat that the damage is minimal. Treat that there's one life which contains all form, and if any form gets damaged by this experience, that new form can come and take its place. And of course, that most of all, that you and the other of your beloveds who might be in the experience are physically unharmed, and so on. You pray. And you move your feet. You treat and move your feet. You've heard that? I heard that. That was one of the first things I heard in Science of Mind. Treat and move your feet. Because there's an inclination sometimes to do one or the other. There's actually more of an inclination people have to move their feet than there is to treat and not. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you're going to do one or the other, that's what most people are going to do, is bring pails of water and call 911. We bring into it the spiritual consciousness, but the spiritual consciousness does not rule out the physical consciousness. And if somebody comes to me and they've got really good practical advice, I'm probably going to listen. And then I'm going to treat. And if somebody says, well, invest all your money in this, or, you know, this is how things are going, or this is what you need to know about the future at the level of form, how things are going, I'm probably going to listen. I'm going to vet them somewhat, you know, and how do they know what they know and stuff. And I'm going to treat, and I'm going to take it all into account. Because we don't live in an either-or universe. We live in a totality of things. So don't make fun of the people who pray. Just remind them, and remind yourself, if you feel like you're one of them, that there's not God and an opposing power. There's not God in this miserable world, you know, like this dungeon world of form that we've all been sentenced to. No, that's not how the God I believe in operates. The God I believe in exuberates in creation, creates this world, put us on it. I don't know how all of that works. What I do know is I'm here. I've been here a while, you know. I got some memories. There's some continuity here of how it's been. Then I've got a while yet to go. And I fully trust that when my time on this earth is up, I'll step into some wonderful new opportunity to do some other great things that maybe I had stopped doing for a while so I could come here and do this. I don't know. Or it's a whole new thing. And that'll be cool too. Because we learn new things all the time as we go anyway. That would be just a dramatic experience of learning. Here's the thing. So going forward, what I encourage you to do is recognize the wholeness, recognize the fullness in you. And I got one last thing to read to you. Did I bring it up here? I think I did. I promised you a little Frederick Bales this month. You see how I set that up? I promised it to you, and it's like, you might not know what this is, but I promised it to you. I think you'll like it. He was one of the first generation of science of mind teachers, a student of Ernest Holmes. He was in San Diego area back in the 1940s and 50s. He wrote this book, when was it now? Let's see here. 1951. He gives an example here, and I was going to paraphrase this, but it's better to use his words. Of spirit within form. He calls it the masterpiece revealed. Perhaps, he says, an illustration from the world of art will, in a way, make clearer the unchanging and unfailing continuity of the original image of perfection. Art dealers have sometimes resorted to a ruse to get a masterpiece out of Europe. He's writing this just after the Second World War, you see. Since governments wishing to keep certain priceless paintings in the land of their origin have forbidden their export, a crafty dealer has taken such a masterpiece to a sixth-rate artist, had him daub a mediocre picture over the original, and then presented it for export. Until the system was discovered, many valuable works of art came to this country in this way. Upon arrival here, they were placed in the hands of a person who knew how to restore the original by gently rubbing with oils. With infinite care, the daub was gradually rubbed away until the masterpiece stood forth once more in all its original beauty. The practitioner must always know that beneath the surface daub of sin, illness, poverty, and misery lies the original masterpiece. Thus, the practitioner's trained thought removes the deceptive surface and lets the original creation stand forth. But just as the restorer cannot create a masterpiece, but only restore it, so the practitioner cannot create perfection, but only uncover it. Before the practitioner can do this, however, they must be sure it lies beneath the surface appearance. This is spiritual thinking. This is what we do when we treat. This is what someone else does when they treat for you, is to recognize they don't have to make your perfection up. When I declare that there's one life, as I'm about to do, and that life is God, and that life is all the life there is, I'm not causing that to be so. I'm causing that to be uncovered within my understanding, and I hope within yours too. I'm causing the extraneous stuff to be wiped gently away from that knowing. That there is, in fact, this one power, one presence. It made this springtime. It made this sweet, cool air that has drifted down from the north for this day. It made those walking paths that we might take to later this afternoon. And a breeze that's ready for kites and frisbees. This power resident within us is right now causing certain things to happen. Some of them instantaneous. Some of them a process that will take till tonight or next week or the end of the year to unfold. But always something is coming forth. Always Spirit is generating into form. And not only for our benefit, but because that's its nature. That's what it's built to do. We take advantage of this when we recognize that this is what is happening. And I choose to consciously participate with this divine creative effort of Spirit informing itself and releasing itself from form. I choose to watch the river flow by. And at times I'll jump into that river and swim along with the current. And other times I'll pull something out of that river. If I see someone struggling, I'll reach out my hand that they might catch on and be lifted out to remember who they are and that they know how to swim. And so I interact with creation with ease, fluency, compassion. I interact with. I create by removing the limits to the creation that desires to occur. And I give shape to Spirit as it enters my life through the boundaries that I set in mind. The images, the visualization that I do. And I trust. I trust the process to wind its way through many roads, through so much countryside, to arrive where I am at just the right moment. As I have this knowing about myself, I have it about all beings everywhere, especially where beings struggle, suffer, question, doubt, and fear. That this awakening, this sudden interior burst of light may occur within each of us and remind us of who we are and that celestial home whence we have come. For this knowing and its manifestation in form everywhere we turn, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into perfect law, calling it done, and so it is.
I was only a little scared of the microphone after watching Melody crackle twice. Yeah. All right. And whatever I was going to say just popped right out of my head. Woohoo! But that's okay, because I'm open now. Something else will pop in. Although one of the things I would like to do is, I know if you listen to Danielle and the announcements, I would like to invite you to Heartfelt Living. Danielle and I are going to partner up and teach Heartfelt Living, and if you've had it, you're welcome to take it again, because every time you take it, you'll learn something new. And the cool thing is every time you take it, there are new and different people in it, and so you get to know each other a little bit better. So it's a whole lot of fun. So please feel free to join us on that one. It's on Zoom. I mean, you can take it in your pajamas. I'm coming from work, so I probably won't be in my pajamas, but don't tempt me. And then the Ernest Holmes class, same thing. Every time you take it, you're going to learn something new. And David and Marcia are wonderful teachers, so please feel free to join us in either of those classes. They're not starting this week. You got a little bit of time to think about it. But I'm gonna jump on the spring train, simply because last year I started a project for me. Like every day I would take my camera out and I would try and take pictures of something that I thought was beautiful, because I needed it. And then I would post it on social media on the various platforms that I have access to, because if I needed it, somebody else probably did too. And so this year, there's been an interesting thing to watch. Because, in February, we had this thing called snow. And we had more of it than we normally get. And so a whole lot of plants went, yeah, I'm out. I'm not doing this. But what's been really cool is to watch the annuals come back, the amaryllises, and I think they're calla lilies. They haven't bloomed yet, but I'm watching them spring up in places that I know nobody is really taking care of them. So I'm looking forward. So they're probably going to be about a month later than usual, but they're doing it. And I want to bring your attention to the palm trees. I know nothing about palm trees other than there's a few different kinds. And there's a bunch of them in my neighborhood, and they turned this beautiful gold color, which meant that they were, the fronds were dead. They were beautiful, and then they weren't. And then a whole bunch of people cut them off, and so now we're left with this stump that looks really weird. And you're like, okay, well, what's going to happen? And I don't watch the alien movies, but now every time I see one, that's what I think of. Because you're starting to see these little green cones poking up out of those dead-looking stumps. And they're in various states, so depending on where you are, you might see just the very start of that little green, or you might see them when they're quite a bit taller and you can see that kind of pale green color, or you might see them where they've started to curl. Honestly, they look like Grinch fingers. But then there's one that was way ahead of the curve in the neighborhood, and it's already bloomed out, and it is this vibrant green that I've never noticed before. And so it's just like, I invite you to look around and experience this softness, this green, this revitalizing that we might not pay attention to if we hadn't had that rather devastating experience of cold. Go looking for it and see the amazing beauty that creation can do in the wake of what arguably was a devastation. nature has this way of coming back. And if that's not proof of a patterning intelligence of a one mind, I don't know what is. So in that springtime, I know that there is one life, one power, one presence, one mind, one love. I'm a part of this love. It flows through me, in me, as me. And so, as I know this about myself, as I know this love, as I feel this love, as I experience this love, as I let this love flow through me out into the world, so too do I know that this love is walking around as each and every one of you. That this love is flowing up through the plants, coming in through the animals, and we are all revitalizing in ways that are both beautiful and unexpected. And that as this love flows through the world, it heals in places that we thought healing wasn't possible. That it brings unity into places that were desperate. That it brings peace into places that it wasn't possible until. Consciousness said, the time is now. Because the time is always now. And that love is flowing. Springtime is just a time that it's the easiest for us to see. And so I know this love, I feel this love, I experience this love. I am in the flow of this love, just as I know each and every one of you are. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. And I relax, release, and know that it is so. And so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it.
I trust it.
I use it.
I use it.
And I love it.
And I
So
love
it is.
And so it is.